Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
I'm Brian.
I'm Lindsey.
And this is our review of Cruel Intentions, starring Sarah Michelle Gellar, Ryan Phillippe, Reese Witherspoon, Selma Blair, Louise Fletcher, Sean Patrick Thomas, Christine Baranski, and Swoosie Kurtz. Directed by Roger Kumble, released in 1999 on a budget of $10.5 million, grossed over $76 million at the box office. That is kind of wild to think about, that this movie made that kind of money. But hey, teenage movies, 1990s, made a lot of dough, but this one got critically slammed. It only lost a worst remake at the Razzies to The Haunting or something like that, if you've ever seen that. So this one is one that we kind of kicked around for a while, Brian, is to wanting to do Cruel Intentions. I think it's probably goes back to the Buffy days.
Definitely goes back to the Buffy days. This was on our short list, but we didn't ever do it because we thought it would be kind of obvious, right? Yeah. It's the obvious Sarah Michelle Gellar flick pick. So we always tried to pick something different and more not the mainstream. But we've always had this on the back burner, something we should do for a Film Strip instead of the Buffy podcast, and just never got around to it. Yeah.
So what about you, Lindsey? What's your background with this movie?
Well, I remember watching it when it first came out in 99, I think. So I was in high school and loved it then. Just watched it tonight, actually, not long before recording, again, to freshen up. It has not aged well. Not the movie I remember, but looking forward to talking about it.
I remember when this one came out as well. I did not see this in theaters. 1999, around when this came out, I was in between college and grad school, and I just wasn't going to movies as much anymore. I think I ended up renting this sometime, later in the fall or whatever, when it came out on video or whatever, because I heard everybody talk about it, oh, you got to see it. Sarah Michelle Gellar plays this total wacko or whatever. And I was like, well, what is this about? And then I read that it was a teenage remake of Dangerous Liaisons, which I had seen. I love the John Malkovich, Glenn Close movie, if you've ever seen that, which is itself an adaptation of another French movie from the 50s based on a book from the 1700s. So it's right up there with 10 Things I Hate About You as being one of the oldest pieces of source material we've ever pulled a movie from. But I remember hearing that. I was like, oh, I like Dangerous Liaisons. I thought it was good. When I first saw Dangerous Liaisons, I don't know that I totally got all of it because I was kind of young. But I watched it again, and then I watched that for this review as well, in addition to Cruel Intentions, just to see what's the symmetry exactly. And oddly enough, they're not that far apart. It's a little more salaciousness in this one, maybe. But for the time in pre-revolutionary France, some of that stuff was very risque and things. Well, what about you, Brian, in terms of background with this?
This came out when I was in college, and I think that I'm the same with you. We didn't go see it in the theater, but we did rent it when it came out. And the reason I think was probably a couple years later. And the reason is because we started watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So we were immediate fans, and we were starting to watch the movies that Sarah Michelle Gellar had been in. And so that's really what got me into it. And I just remember watching this, and my wife and I, my girlfriend at the time, we were both just like, holy crap, what a difference in character Sarah Michelle Gellar is playing here from anything that we had seen before, right? I mean, she'd go on to do more risque stuff like this afterwards, but until then, she played goody two-shoe characters, and it was interesting, yes. Yeah,
I think when she got to doing movies, she desperately didn't want to play Buffy in any way. We talked about that on I Know What You Did last year, where she definitely wanted to not play the heroin girl or a girl on heroin at that point. But so she went for the other role there in that movie, and then this one is very much playing against type of Buffy, which I find interesting. Lindsey, you're an actress, so what's that like though? Would you do something and then you don't want to do that again?
Yeah, and I was going to say it's difficult to do for a lot of film actors and actresses, I think, to make that leap from doing something that's very heroic or very almost innocent to especially if you're younger when you start, then you want to break out and show the world that you're not actually a child anymore. You're an adult and you can do adult things. And it's a classic trope amongst child actors to try to do that, and it doesn't always work. Sarah Michelle Gellar managed to do it, and she did it well. And even from an acting perspective, you want to challenge your own range. You want to get out of your own comfort zone. And I think every actor on some level really wants to play a villain at some point because there's so much fun to play and explore. So she did a great job with this one. You know, as far as the movie goes, it's a weird movie, but her, you know, she did what she needed to do to break out of the shell that she had been cast in.
And Ryan Phillippe playing an obnoxious jerk just seems like on the nose. I mean, from what I understand is he's actually a decent person in real life, but he just, for years, he just played like the asshole boyfriend. Like that was kind of his thing. Cause I know
what you did last summer.
Yeah.
You played the asshole boyfriend in there.
Exactly. I think it's all in his face and the way he emotes in his face. He just can look so intense and so completely bored with you. And just done, you know, he just dismisses you with a look, and I think that's fun. I mean, you know, it's neat to watch a movie like this where you see a lot of young Hollywood from the time sort of get minted. You know, Sean Patrick Thomas and Selma Blair, and you've got all these people in this. Reese Witherspoon, who was a thing and had been around for years at that point, but was definitely coming into her own as an actress as well. And then you surround them with these good character actresses like Louise Fletcher and Christine Baranski and Swoosie Kurtz. And, you know, they can have a lot of fun. There's a lot of room to play in that area. And this was clearly something like the director was into, y'all. Like, we'll talk about the sequels and ill-fated TV show and all this other stuff when we get through the movie tonight. But this was something that was a passion project for this dude. This is kind of, he wanted to be the Cruel Intentions guy. He doesn't mind being known for that, even though he's directed other stuff. But yeah, it's neat to go back and see these things, and then now you watch movies and you see a lot of young TV stars or network stars that get into a movie, and you're like, oh, I remember when you were on this show, and now you're doing this movie, you know. So it's like watching the Riverdale kids all get cast into movies and stuff now or whatever. It's the cycle. It's Hollywood. It's just how things go, but. It's fun to get back into this one. It had been a long time since I've seen this, honestly. Like, I think I watched it, I don't know, probably back when we were doing The Art of Slaying, Brian, because it was one of those things we were considering. I thought, I hadn't seen that in a while. Let me throw it on. Watched it, and I hadn't seen it in years. But I can attest that when I told my wife we were doing this, she was like, oh, finally something I want to watch with you. So, see, we broke through on that. So
yeah, I haven't watched it in a long time either. In fact, I remember I bought it for The Art of Slaying, and it was still sealed when I opened it to watch it for this. So, yes, It's been a while.
So this was a date night for you, too, was it, Jay?
As is often the joke of the horrible things I make her watch for the show here, at least something past, at least first pass muster. We'll talk about impressions as we get through it. I guess I should do a plot summary to try to tell what happens here. I'm going to try to keep this high level. We can get into it as we go. Two step-siblings, Catherine and Sebastian, who get off on wanton hedonism and destruction of other people, make a bet to deflower the new school headmaster's daughter, Annette, who once wrote an op-ed about saving herself for marriage. Catherine also uses Sebastian to wreck the reputation of Cecile, a new student who Catherine's ex-lover left her for. Problem is, Sebastian actually falls for Annette and comes to resent Catherine's manipulations and deceptions, which he keeps a very lurid journal of. Sebastian and Annette begin a love affair, but when Catherine threatens to ruin Sebastian's reputation as a playboy, he goes to call it off with Annette in a cruel manner. Sebastian comes to find out that Annette wasn't the target of Catherine's ploy at all, but he was. Realizing his mistake, Sebastian begs for her forgiveness and gives her his journal as an attempt to show her he has changed and loves her. Before Annette is able to confess her love for Sebastian, he's killed in a car wreck, or in a car accident, and saves her life in the process. Sebastian and Annette pledge their love for one another as he's dying. And at Sebastian's funeral, Annette uses the contents of the journal to out Catherine in one of the greatest burn book moments of all time to the world, and drives off in Sebastian's car, cranking Bittersweet Symphony by the Verve as credits roll. And that's about the straight line through on this movie. We can get into a lot of the details, and there certainly are a lot of details. But I threw in that music cue there at the end specifically because I think that's the one thing I maybe remembered most from this movie, other than Sarah Michelle Gellar chewing the scenery up with her evilness, was the slamming late 90s complaint rock soundtrack that is this. I mean, I think I owned every CD these bands put out for several years there, man. This was a killer soundtrack.
It's an awesome soundtrack, and it contains my favorite Counting Crows song ever on it, Colorblind.
Yes.
Which is used so well in the movie, too. But just a phenomenal soundtrack. I bought the soundtrack. It was recently reissued on vinyl, and I bought it right away, and it's just absolutely fantastic. So, just a great soundtrack.
You got Amy Mann on here. You got Marcy Playground, Blur, Fatboy Slim. I mean, come on. You even got a little ska in there. I mean, come on. There's a little bit of all of it from 99.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
It's perfect. And to watch it now after not having seen it in so long, it's incredibly nostalgic to hear all of that music that you listened to decades ago. Which is weird because really it was only like 5 years ago. So it was when the 90s was.
Yeah, but it feels like a long time ago, right? Yeah, you were in high school, though, when this came out, Lindsey. So this is like the soundtrack of your high school.
Yeah, this movie was made for me. Really weird preteen 50 Shades of Grey movie.
I've never heard it called that, but that is awesome.
I can't take credit for that one, but but I will repeat it here.
That's outstanding. So let's talk about our characters. I think that's kind of a good way to look at this movie. And let's start with Sebastian, because I want to get to Catherine in a second. We talked about Ryan Phillippe and kind of playing the a-hole boyfriend and this thing. I like the twist on it here is that he is, whether he intended to or not, is totally doing a riff off of what Malkovich does in Dangerous Liaisons, of the playboy who does not care what other people say about him. He is going to run through as many women as he possibly can, evidenced by the fact that he's using lines on his therapist when we meet him that he used on the therapist's daughter, a great cameo by Tara Reid, by the way, and then picks up some rando girl in the mall where the therapy session is to go to lunch and supposedly beds her as well as he throws her, phone number away later on. What an intro to a character.
Yeah, it's almost campy the way he plays it. And I don't hate it. I think he has he does a great job as an actor in playing with the campiness of it. I know you said it was a remake. I actually did not know this until today. So I learned something from you, Jay. I'll have to go back and watch that movie. But knowing that now, I think he does a great job playing with the campiness, and then you have some of those really serious moments, but his comedic timing for a lot of moments is just perfection. It is on point.
Yeah, I love the character because I really don't have any feelings. I'm playing you the way I need to, like a fiddle, to get you what I want. And what I want is for you to be in the most pain possible when I'm done with you. And I have gotten my satisfaction out of everything. And he plays it so well. And yeah, his character in this movie is absolutely fantastic. It's a no feelings, no care in the world. I'm just going to do what I want to get what I want. And I'm going to have fun with you, like a cat playing with a mouse before killing it, right? That's how he perceives everything he does. And he gets deep into detail too, right? I mean, he's not only going to therapy with this doctor and confessing all these problems and his addiction to sex and everything else. But what you find out after he leaves is that he totally used the therapist to get to her daughter to screw the therapist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was all meant to piss off the therapist, and the daughter was just a piece in the pie that got screwed around too. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I love it when Tara Reid has finally called her mother as Sebastian has left the office and is just crying her eyes out like, he told me he loved me. And she's like trying to do the whole, as I said in my book, like she's doing the TV therapist doctor thing. And I love how she calls her out on it. Like, I don't need that right now, Mom. And then when she figures out, it's like, oh, it was him. And then she has her whole episode at the mall. The cops have to take her away. And he's like, clearly she needs help, and it's just running over somebody for no reason other than to do it.
Because he used the same lines, right? He used you have such great legs. I would love to photograph them. Yes. And that's how she knew what was going on. It was just perfect.
Y'all hit on something too, though, that I think is cool about this character, and it's something that's a trait that they really built into this version of it, is that Sebastian journals and he writes a lot. So he's very, to be as manipulative as he is and maybe unfeeling, he clearly channels himself into something. And after all of it, we see him later on after he's with Cecile and other things. It's kind of a played off as a joke. It's like, this is what we call quiet time, Cecile. But he's constantly writing something down, and I don't even know that he realizes what the purpose of that is, but he's basically putting down all the secrets he knows, all the bad stuff he's done, so that one day that might actually be a tool he can use again.
Yeah, I never really thought of it like that. I feel like he is just such a classic, like, brooding 90s, character that all the ladies want. I remember thinking he was attractive. I was mistaken. I was in high school. I didn't know anything then. It was different. It was a different time. But I remember seeing that journal when you first finally see it open up and what it looks like and his handwriting and the detail that he put in there. And I remember in my head thinking, that's a beautiful journal. I should start journaling. And then, I never did, because who does that? I mean, some people do that, but like the way that it was laid out, and I remember thinking, like, I will never be able to journal as beautifully as his is laid out like that. But he really had some layers.
Yeah, people used to give me journals all the time. Like, here, you like to write things down, and they are stacked neatly on a bookshelf, not a pen mark on them. I don't write things down. It's more in my head, and that's why I have a podcast and I don't write blogs. It's because I'd rather just say it or think about it. That's kind of my thing. But it's a neat way to watch him process through all that stuff.
What I think is funny, the thought that came to my mind watching this, of course, many, many moons later, is looking at that journal thinking, he's writing down all of his escapades in this journal, right? It kind of reminds me of the scene in American Pie when he pulls out the big book of secrets.
The book of love.
with Tara Reid. Oh, yeah. So maybe he wrote that, right?
I forgot about that. I haven't seen that movie since around the same time.
We're talking about
99.
We're talking about the same time frame there. So absolutely. Yeah, that is, I would have never connected that until you said that. That's awesome. But we do, though, that when we see the journal on the seat cover while he's driving in the car, he's got that cool classic Jag, and he's slinging it around, and it lets you kind of see where Sebastian's coming from. And then we meet our other main character, or at least our second lead, Catherine, and we've got to talk about Sarah Michelle Gellar and just the cool performance that she lays out as this total sociopath. I mean, completely. And this is different than the Glenn Close version. The Glenn Close version is if you took the crazy lady from Fatal Attraction and put her in pre-Civil or pre-Revolutionary France, she plays the same kind of thing again. Very manipulative, but very cold. The thing about Catherine that I thought was fun was that as mean as she is, and she is incredibly mean, she comes off as just so caring and just so she's there with you. And then she does a shot, snort of cocaine, and then she's right back into talking to you about your relationship with God and all this other stuff. And I love how she just flips from thing to thing, and it's almost like she puts on the mask and then she steps to the side to tell us, the audience, no, I'm really this horrible human being. Watch me manipulate this poor girl into complete tears. Oh, hello, let me help you with your makeup.
Hey, well, that's how master manipulators work. I don't know if you've had the misfortune of ever crossing paths with one, but that's kind of how it works.
Sadly, many times. So, yeah.
Now, her character's fantastic in this, and like you said, Jay, she puts on a mask for everyone else. She's the perfect angel student body president, the great, she's there to help everyone, right? But she's got an agenda, right? And she's able to show you this face and then turn around and give you this face, right? Just crazy. And she does it great. I love the scenes with Cecile, especially where she's like trying to be like, oh, honey, no, that's okay. You can do that. You should just kiss him or tell him you love him. And then turn around going, what an idiot. You know, it's just fantastic. She does such a great job in this film of playing that, just, I don't know how to describe it. Is it psychopathic? I don't know. But she's fantastic.
Well, the thing is that Catherine is so good at being fake. Like, she really is. That you wonder who she really is underneath all the layers. And if we ever get to see it. Because the character it's based on is so deep in her own web of lies, you never really know what she's all about. Like, I wonder, you know, like the tears she's crying at the end, is she sad because she got busted, or is she legitimately sad? I mean, the way it plays off is that she said she got busted, but you could ask and go like, oh, is this her like one moment of actual realizing, oh, I've really screwed up?
There is a brief moment in her facial expression, and I hope it's just Sarah Michelle Gellar being a really great actress and being able to play those nuances, but there's a teeny tiny glimmer of when she's tearing up that it looks like she's doing it because she's sad that her stepbrother actually thought of her and wrote about her in the way that he did. Most of it was because she was getting busted, I feel like. But I think like deep down, there was that moment where it's like she thought she had him in her web and she really didn't. And there was a realization there that was like, oh, well, crap.
She also has some really strong statements in this movie, too, particularly when it comes to sex and things like that, is that she says, oh, so, you know, as she's talking to Sebastian, you can go and, you know, hammer half of the Manhattan and nobody says anything in the world. But if I do it, I'm all of a sudden this awful skank. And, you know, where's the fairness in that? And she's calling that out. And the thing you realize, though, is that that's just another manipulation of hers. She's just using that argument to try to get over on him again, because that's the big reveal of this movie. And it's something that, honestly, when I first saw it, I don't know that I totally caught the whole way through, even though I knew Dangerous Liaisons, was that he was the mark the whole time. And that's what's just a neat twist about this, is that she's able to go along with so much of the deep lies again because he's the one she is trying to pull it over on. And I mean, she offers him the thing he can't have. And I mean, he's got everything in the world, right? Except her. And he knows, you know, she wants it. And, you know, then she lays all that cheesy stuff on him about it. And I'm like, man, what a bet. The Jaguar for her. I mean, I was like, wow, that's a strange deal. But yeah, sure, go for it if you can do it, I suppose.
She couldn't drive it.
No,
Just don't think she'd know how.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the best part about this whole movie, is that this whole time you think that they're working together, right? But in reality, she's trying to not only get revenge on her ex, who's, you know, dating this Cecile, but she wants to completely ruin Sebastian, right? She wants to completely ruin him because deep down inside, she just doesn't really care about him. And he's living there because their parents are married, and obviously that's a great marriage, as we tell from here. They get along well. But yeah, she knows that he really wants her, and she has no inkling of wanting him at all. And so yeah, she decides to play with his whole life and try and ruin it.
Yeah, and that brings in our third lead as the person who is the complete pawn in all of this. Annette, Reese Witherspoon, all-American gal, comes in the middle here, and it's Catherine's excuse to, like, okay, I found the girl who says she's not going to sleep with anybody before she's married, so that's going to be a challenge to Stud Boy over here, and that's how I'm going to
but he finds the girl. Like, that was his find, right?
Right.
The magazine, he drops it on her.
Right,
Yeah.
but she jumps into it, though, and says, this is perfect. I can totally use this to get him to do what I want, with Cecile and ruin it for my ex-boyfriend who left me for her. And I can also ruin the headmaster's daughter at the same time and him. It's 3 at once.
Yeah. She's got a turkey. Hat trick. Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But she saw the opportunity.
Yeah. What'd y'all make of Annette, though, and particularly Reese Witherspoon, the way she plays her?
I think it's interesting that Reese Witherspoon is still the same age now as she was in 1999. I'm just going to throw that out there. Annette, well, Reese Witherspoon was a good casting choice for Annette for a few reasons, but I think, I don't know, she's so wholesome looking, and that really helped. She didn't look like a cokehead, bulimic, sociopathic monster. She was a total 180 from Sarah Michelle Gellar, like total 180. And I think, that was clearly intentional.
We have to remember, too, at the time that this movie came out, that was a big deal. You had superstars like Britney Spears and Jessica Simpson and all them coming out and saying that they were going to wait until they were married to have sex and this and that. And it was kind of a big deal among teens at the time. So the character fit the time perfectly for what it was. And I think that she did a great job. She comes on as just this smart, down-to-earth person who has all but the best intentions and then starts falling for this guy who she's already been warned not to get engaged with, right? Don't let him manipulate you. She's given the heads up, and yet still she finds a way to get drawn in by him, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, obviously, the quarterback Greg has something to do with that too, in helping Sebastian kind of loosen that feeling of that he's manipulating her. But even when she's given the go-ahead to kind of engage because he's not as bad as his reputation is, he shows his reputation a couple times. Look at the swimming pool scene. Like, he completely manipulates her in that one, and she calls him on it. So it's like, how you're not seeing this, That's
the thing I liked about her was in addition to being that down-home, wholesome kind of gal, she's also incredibly confident in herself and where she's going and where her lines are, and not impressed. And honestly, it reminded me of several friends of mine in college that I knew that I wasn't romantically involved with, but just friends with them who they were the kind of gals that I saw like every player guy try to go after, and they batted them away the way that she did him initially. Thankfully, none of them ever really fell hook, line, and sinker for the Sebastians of the world, but we all knew those, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think she enjoyed it too. Yes, she was confident. She knew exactly who she was. But she has that line where she said, well, usually people praise me for it. And he was like, well, people are, they don't know themselves. They lie a lot. So,
he calls her out. Like, he insults her.
Yeah, and that was the first time anyone had ever even, thought about that, or that's the first time she's ever really heard it from anyone, because she's always gotten these pats on the back for it. And I think that challenged her and ultimately led to where she ended up.
I think it's no small thing either too. Her and Ryan Phillippe were married at this point, and they obviously have a ton of chemistry together. You're going to cast people, you want to make sure they've got chemistry, that they had it in real life for a number of years. And even though their marriage didn't work out, that by both of them accounts, that they still talk to each other. They've raised their kids together. They don't hate each other. They were just really young when they got married, and so it didn't work. But at the time, you can see it when they're together. Like, it's in the background, like you could really see them together because they just have, I don't know, they have an easiness with each other, and that doesn't always come off with couples when they work with each other on screen or on things. Like, sometimes it can be really awkward and tension. Matter of fact, like, some of the best stories in Hollywood are when the two romantic leads absolutely hate each other, and they're able to channel that, like Terms of Endearment, Pretty Woman, and there's tons of movies that are like that where they don't like each other but they can make it work. And in this case, they actually live together and were a thing.
And then you have movies like Geely, that, you know.
Dear God.
Wow, I didn't think we'd be bringing that one up.
It didn't
today,
work
but
at all,
Up the
but
big guns.
they were married in that movie, so
yeah, exactly.
it doesn't always work. But I agree with you, Jay. I think their chemistry in this one was really good.
What's neat to watch Annette's character do as she evolves throughout this thing and realizes that she's been manipulated and things like that, but still sort of makes her own choices, is that end scene she has with Catherine in the bathroom where she lays all that stuff on Catherine about like, well, when I'm having a hard time, I turn to Jesus and he just gets me there. And it's a total riff off the first thing we see Catherine do to Cecile. And it doesn't dawn on Catherine as to like, how did you know to use my line on me? And that when you 3 minutes later, you realize like, oh, I read the book about you because your stepbrother totally nailed you for that in his journal, as it were. And I thought that was a great twist of the knife there at the end by her.
It was so great. And in that bathroom scene, it's an interesting reaction. I mean, for me as a viewer, because you've watched this entire movie where you intimately know both of these characters and you don't realize this is the first time they're meeting until it's the first time they're meeting. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Here we go. So,
spoiler alert, that was invented for this movie. That's not part of the original story. That's not part of Dangerous Liaisons. Those characters never meet in that story. So I like that change to this because she needed to have that moment, I think. I think that character had earned that after everything she had gone through.
I agree.
What I wanted to ask y'all was, though, when Sebastian and her do finally get together, and I mean fully get together and things like that, is it because he has fallen in love with her, or is he still playing the game? Okay, tell me why.
Oh, you can tell he's been falling in love the whole time, and he's even called out on it too a couple times. And I think that he has fully given himself to her at this point, and he's doing it because not because of the bet, right? He's doing it because the timing was right, and they both felt it, right? Had it been just for the bet, I think he would have had less emotion there. But that was strong, passionate session that they had there, right? They were into each other. They were making love. They weren't fucking, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, he was completely in love with her at that point. And even so, when he finally comes to collect on, he doesn't even come to collect on the debt. He tells her that, tells Catherine that the deed is done, and she comes to give him the bet, and he says, nah, I'm not interested right now. You know, and that's when she calls him out that he's changed, and then manipulates him to think that he needs to go back to his own self or his reputation's down the toilet, right? And you can tell too, when he goes to tell Annette that it was all a game, it's hard for him to do that. And he's crying while doing it. She totally calls him out that he's not telling her what he means. He's just trying to hurt her. And she wants to know why. So yeah, I think he's totally fallen for her at that point.
Yeah. And he keeps crying too.
Yeah. And the point that he fell for is when he went to the train station to get her as she was leaving. That's when you know that he has fallen head over heels for her. And that's why the whole lead up to that with the song and everything in there is perfect. It was done just perfectly.
Yeah. That was just like a classic shot. And again, yeah, it was the song and then the hymn at the top of the escalator. Very just like, dagger in the heart moment. It was beautiful.
He came to get her at just the right moment or whatever. I think you'll make a good argument there. The thing that I push back a little bit on, and maybe it's the performance, is I watched this movie this time and something hit me that maybe never had before. I think George Lucas was a fan of this because so much of the Ryan Phillippe, I'm in love with you so much that I can't stand it, looks so much like Hayden Christensen laying that stuff on Natalie Portman in Attack of the Clones.
Oh, how dare you?
It's the same.
No, but you're right, because I didn't think that specifically, but I definitely thought Hayden Christensen at one point, and now I can't unthink that. Yeah. Thanks, Jay.
Well, I mean, Hayden Christensen's about a foot taller than Phillippe, so that should help somewhat. And he was acting against a wall of green screen, so he didn't even see half of what he was talking about. But it's some of the same kind of overwrought emotion stuff. And I'm really thinking back, not so much the train station, because I think y'all right. I think at that point he was so head over heels for her, he went out of his way to try to find her where she was. But it's when she and he are sitting in the park or whatever, and he tries to kiss her, and they start making out, and then she pushes him away, and he like has this whole like freak out about it, like what is this? You can't know love until you feel it.
Oh yeah, he's still playing at that point.
That was not sincere.
Yeah, he's still playing at that point.
Yeah, and that is very like Attack of the Clones Hallmark card love story stuff going on there. It's incredibly cheesy. But if it's because if the point of that is that it seems so cheesy because it is so fake, because it is fake, when they do have the actual moment at the train station and then everything after, there's so much real to that. That felt very much like two people who were in love.
Yeah, it totally switched from, you can tell everything leading up to that point was completely part of the game. Just in the actions, the way he reacted, the things that he said, all of that were part of the game. And then when he goes to confront her friend and ask where she went and where she is, and runs to that train station to be there when she gets there, that's when it all flips. And everything from then on is shown from a side of someone who's fallen in love and isn't playing the game.
Yeah. And honestly, I think they do a good job with the music dictating how the audience is supposed to feel in that moment too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good example of a soundtrack, and particularly a pop soundtrack, driving the narrative along with everything else going on. There's a real art to good music placement in a movie. I mean, it really works. Nick and I talked about it in December on St. Elmo's Fire. That song is not anything about what that movie is about. It was written about a para-Olympian, but when they drop it in that movie, it's in the perfect moments, because David Foster writes incredible pop music, and it gets you to the right emotional place. And the same with all the songs in this, and particularly this is like Gen X preppy white kid angst in a movie. I mean, that's what this movie could be subtitled. And as a matter of fact, that may have been the clapperboard, like, when they were trying to hide what they were actually shooting or whatever, was Gen X, preppy white kid angst. And it's a soundtrack that brings that about. And that era of music in particular was known for a lot of things. One of the things I really enjoyed about the soundtrack were all the female rock songs. Like the lead singers, because that's something that's kind of forgotten about the post-grunge era, is there were a lot of girl bands and a lot of girl singers that put out some killer music in that time. And it was just as hard-edged and just as emotive as anything the dudes were doing, too. And I thought that was a good mix and balance of things on the soundtrack to drive that narrative along again.
Yeah.
I would argue that a lot of it was better than what the dudes were doing.
Yeah, true that, yeah. Especially for the era, yeah, it's not untrue. I can tell you that. Like, I can still jam to Veruca Salt. That's a killer band. Let's talk about Cecile here, Selma Blair, and all her comedic stupidity. It's one thing to describe a character and dismiss it as like airhead, and I don't know that totally encapsulates Cecile. And I think I've picked up on something this time, that it's not so much that she's dumb. She is incredibly naive, incredibly sheltered, incredibly inexperienced in anything in the world. And then she gets put with these two monsters. It's amazing she's even speaking sentences at the end of this movie.
Do you know what, though? It almost, her character arc was exactly what she needed to kind of find a little bit of herself and less of her mom and her mom's influence on her, because she just owned it at a certain point. I mean, after she and Sebastian got together, and she was just like prude, like when he left her. It's like, okay, I think she'll be fine. I think, and then, at the very end, she's handing out copies of his journal, proud of it, knowing full well that she's in parts of it, and she just owns it, and I think she's totally fine with that. I think she's been sheltered enough her entire life to just be like, this is fine, I'm good with this.
It's the old Catholic girls
yes
analogy, right? brought up your whole,
even in the uniform.
Yeah, seriously, brought up your whole life thinking that, knowing nothing about sex, because let me tell you, they didn't teach it until way later in Catholic schools what that even was. It was up to your parents to tell you that, and Catholic parents not so much on the telling thing, right? And then getting out in the real world, college, right? And all of a sudden, holy shit, what a different world it is. And so she is completely naive to everything, right? Completely naive to what sex is, she probably has never even kissed a guy at this point. And then she starts falling for her music teacher, who, I think he was being paid by Catherine to kind of deflower her. And that doesn't go very well. But he starts having feelings for her, and this and that is just an awesome thing. But then when Ryan Phillippe or Sebastian gets a hold of her and actually convinces her to allow him to do things to her that she's never had done before, all of a sudden, light switch on. She's experiencing a whole new world. She likes it, and she's going for more.
Well, it starts, though, with Sarah Michelle Gellar. I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar is giving her everything from makeup tips to here's how to make out. And, I mean, that was a scene that got, that was all over MTV.
Lives in infamy.
It was so close up.
There was just connective.
Sarah Michelle Gellar, to this day, on the anniversary of the release of that movie, posts that video clip picture every year. Her and Selma Blair are very good friends.
Yes, they are.
And they talk about it every year around that time, and it's hilarious.
And you know what? They should. Why not? But I didn't. It was just so close up, and I did not remember. I mean, I knew that it happened, but I was like, wow. You can really see all the detail there, can't you?
Well, let's put that in context, though, too. In 1999, that was a huge deal, a huge taboo thing.
I don't think it was taboo, but I think boys had to change their shorts afterwards. I don't think it was something that you saw often, not on television.
Not in movies.
Yeah.
Not in movies.
Definitely not in mainstream movies with with people that you knew from other things. Did I just see Buffy make out with that dark-headed chick? I mean, that was the reaction people had.
What was the rating of this, by the way? Is it PG-13?
This R.
This was an R. This was definitely an R. Yeah.
Too many F words to be anything else.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was definitely an R. The thing that was that everyone was pretty clear about. And Reese Witherspoon had done nudity at that point. Sarah Michelle Gellar doesn't do it and was like, nah, I'm not doing that. And even Phillippe was like, I'll do the backside. But
was that him for real, or was it a double though?
That's him, according to him, and according to Reese too. That was him. So, and she would know. And so
good for them. Seriously,
he was working out a lot. Okay, but what's funny is you look at him and you think like, God, he's this huge person. He's only like 5'9", right? That just shows you how short Reese Witherspoon is. She's barely 5 feet tall. Like, she's a very short person.
Is he really 5'9"? I thought he was shorter than that.
Well, that's what he's listed.
I thought okay.
Yeah, we looked that up during.
I Know What You Did Last Summer, because he was so much shorter and he had to be filmed a certain way.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a quarterback. Well, that's because Freddie Prinze is legitimately a tall guy. He's 6'3".
Yeah,
like, he's a tall kid. But
another 90s staple.
There you go, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's almost, you wonder like why he wasn't walking in the background, but he wasn't as big a deal as these other people at that time. Like he was just breaking out. But this is a huge year for Phillippe. He had I Know What You Did Last Summer. He had a lot of other things coming on. Reese Witherspoon again had been in a lot of stuff, but that was the thing that the director talked about. He said, I had to be real careful about the sex and all that stuff and how undressed I could have these people. He said, because I knew the kind of language we had. I knew the stuff we were talking about in here, that the MPAA was going to murder this. And and even then they
NC-17.
Yeah, they still had to cut it a lot because again, they're making a commercial property here. They're trying to get this out to an audience. And even though it's made for teenagers, obviously it was made for older teenagers and college students, and then you'd sneak your younger siblings in or just hope that the ticket counter didn't notice, right? And so, and the thing made money. Clearly, like you saw the box office. Who cares if it gets panned? It's made its budget back 7 times over, and it's the kind of movie that would sell itself just on reputation from scenes like we just talked about with Selma Blair and Sarah Michelle Gellar. What I think is interesting about the way that their relationship goes and the way Catherine uses her is that it's only at the very end Cecile realizes that she is getting used in all of this when she finally reads the burn book, as it were. But she does get the sweet smile of revenge. Like she doesn't become a mean person herself, which I kind of like that. Even though she's not as innocent as she was when we started the movie, she's still enough to go like, and here you go, sweetie, goodbye.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I like it too. I think her character really blossoms in this film as it goes. You have the great scene with her mom and what was the music teacher's name? I can't ever remember.
It's Ronald is his character's
Ronald,
name, but it's Sean Patrick
yes.
Thomas is the actor.
Yeah, so Ronald is an African American teaching a rich white girl how to play bass. Is it a cello?
Cello.
Yeah, playing a cello. And, mom gets manipulated into thinking that he's in love with her and sending her all these love letters that Catherine and Sebastian have been writing for him. And she gets upset because he's a black guy on a white daughter, and back then, the rich people didn't like that so much.
The best part is when she's like, I pulled you off the street, and he's like, I live on 53rd.
I live on 59 in Park.
Yeah.
And then she says,
I specifically wrote that down. It was so good.
She says, we gave money to Colin Powell. Oh, well, I guess you put me in my place.
Yeah, nobody's leaving. Like,
and then
nobody's leaving. Yeah, I thought
such a great line.
Great. It was,
yeah.
Yeah. But that's commentary again. It's not in the source material, but I love that they pulled that into here because again, young upcoming actors. Let's make a statement about this because there's all these super rich, people that feel like I donate to, UNICEF and that makes me okay and to be totally racist. And no, it doesn't. Yeah. And that's what he's calling out, which I appreciated and thought it was a good bit of humor and break in, all the sexcapades and manipulation going on that we have just this aside of 5 minutes of Christine Baranski, who's an incredible comedic actress, pulling that off, and he just gives it right back to her the whole time.
Yeah, it was his character was great. That was maybe, I don't know if it was my favorite scene in the film, but it was up there probably in the top 5. He just made it. I really just love I live on 59 in Park. Like, I'm going to Juilliard. This is you didn't take me off the street.
I'm not from Harlem.
I'm not a peasant. But she's wearing this, and I have to digress for just a minute to just talk about the costuming because she's wearing like your classic pink tweed Chanel suit. And Catherine's wardrobe was epic. Sebastian's wardrobe was fine for the 90s. It was top notch, but it's men's fashion in the 90s was so. But I mean, and Cecile was dressed really well too. I mean, to follow her whole character arc because it was a little bit awkward and you see her get older through her costuming too. So that was super interesting for me to see.
Yeah, she goes from wearing like a t-shirt and looking like a little kid to a young woman and someone who, and then she's in her uniform and she's kind of wearing it cool. She's not totally buttoned up and everything. Yeah. So yeah, you're right to call that out though, Lindsay, too, because that's so much of the story of this because of when the source material is set is the costuming is gorgeous and period pieces and stuff. Well, how do you do that in a 90s movie and not make it feel dated? I mean, we're talking about something that at this point is over 20 years old, and all it does is just make me remember how preppy kids dressed when I was in school. I mean, that's what everyone dressed like.
Well, a classic Chanel pink tweed suit never goes out of style, Jay. You just have to get it tailored once in a while.
Good to know. Note to self. Don't have one in my closet right now, but okay.
I still got a flannel.
I have lots of flannels, and I'm wearing like a pumpkin spice t-shirt right now. So clearly I'm the pinnacle of fashion at the moment.
But that's the thing, is that the way that these people are dressed, and this is how you know when costuming works in a movie, at least for me, is that you recognize that, like, oh yes, that dress is the way these people are dressed says something about who they are and where they're going, or whatever. But it also doesn't take me out of the movie and like that's all I'm thinking about. They're appropriate for the character and the arc that they're playing.
Yes. Yep.
That's what makes it cool to watch. So we got to talk about the scenes that Sebastian and Catherine have together, but particularly the one where she totally emasculates him and convinces him he's got to break up with Annette at this point. I thought our two actors really went for it there and really sold the emotions and the anger and the just total absolute hatred they have for one another while still playing along, or at least Sebastian, you can tell he cannot stand this woman, but he also somewhere in his ego realizes she's right. I've got to go and do this.
Well, not only that, but that one line that she says that uses what she knows to be true against him in the worst, best way was, it'll ruin your reputation, but it will destroy hers. And you have that moment, and I think collectively everyone watching and both Sebastian and Catherine know she's right. Like, it will destroy hers because she's the wait till you fall in love girl. She had a whole expose in Vogue or whatever magazine it was. And, it was like, oh, well, now he has to do it.
Yeah, very good scene. You see Catherine throwing herself at him because he won the bet, right? And he's denying her, which completely pisses her off because nobody denies Catherine. And especially after she's been fooling around with Ronald in her bedroom before he came in. Now she's not going to get laid at all, and she's pissed about that. But she does a great job of convincing him that he has to do this not only for him, but because if he doesn't, she's going to ruin her. And so he better do it for both of them. And all along we find out that she's playing him because she wants to ruin them both. Right? That's her goal. And just an absolutely great scene, great acting. I just can't say enough about the two of them together in all of their scenes. They're just so well done. She is just so good at pouring it on and getting to him throughout this whole film. The scene where she's kind of like on top of him and whispering to him about things and playing around with him, and then just gets up and says, "Down, boy." And walks away, and he's like, "Oh, come on," Just, she does a great job throughout this of just being that complete, like, tease and bitch, and it's really good.
Yeah, but she plays it off for her ends, and that's what she realized. Like, ruining Annette is just a side benefit. She could care less. She's already ruined Cecile, so if ex-boyfriend wants her well, she's definitely not fresh material, if that's what he cared about or whatever. Yeah. So she's gotten that out of it, and now her biggest pelt to put on the wall is, I've ruined the playboy that I cannot stand. I've pushed him to the end, and I mean, until the very end happens, there's a way you could have ended this movie where Catherine wins and everybody's destroyed, and it's like, well, I mean, that would be like a real downbeat or whatever, but it's also incredibly dramatically fulfilling in one way, too. Because look, let's face it, guys, evil wins a lot in life, and it sucks, but you see it all the time. And I don't know, if you were trying to make a franchise or something, or make a TV show or whatever, that's how you got to end the first season, is she wins and everybody's, wrought at the end of it.
Here's a fun alternative twist. Let me take you guys to Crazy Town for a minute. What if Annette was the master manipulator in this whole thing?
Mind.
Yeah, right?
Wow.
Think about that. She ends up with a car, right? Which is, let's be honest, like, that's what everybody wanted. That's what all the bets were on. She got everything she wanted pretty much in the end. She found love. It didn't last long, but she found it. But Or maybe she didn't. I don't know. Maybe it was just for the car. Or maybe there was some ulterior motive against these two hooligans. I don't know. What if Annette was the master manipulator?
So maybe Aunt Nurse Ratched put her up to it. And that's because she knew of Sebastian and, of course, knew Catherine. You know what? That's an incredible alternative theory. I could see that.
I feel some fan fiction coming on.
That would be some interesting fanfic. Throw that on Reddit. See what happens. That could work.
It's probably already there.
It's right, true.
I'm sure.
Well, but let's talk about the end and how things go, because Catherine is not satisfied, obviously. So she calls Ronald up and is like, he hit me. And, because she knows she can manipulate this poor fool into going after Sebastian. And my question to y'all is, like, does she think he's going to kill him or just beat him up? Because now she wants to see him, like, physically humiliated, too. Because what happens is they get in the fight. He gets, Annette tries to intervene, gets pushed in the road in front of a cab, and Sebastian knocks her out of the way, and the slowest braking cab ever finally hits him. But I don't think Ronald went there to kill him. Maybe just to rough him up.
No, just to beat him up.
Yeah. And I don't even, he wasn't expecting to see him. I guess I'm a little confused. Was Ronald leaving or going to see Catherine at their meetup?
He had left her at that point because she had called him.
Right. So he went to see her. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He went to find Sebastian and confront him.
Sure. Yeah. I don't think that there was anything particularly malicious outside of, the brutish, boyish, like, I'm going to beat you up situation. And then I think he was just angry in general and happened to cross paths at the wrong time. And if I may, I have seen the movie Elf. Perhaps you two are familiar with it. Will Ferrell got hit by a cab in that movie at about the same speed, and he was fine. I just don't think that accident would have killed Sebastian. I had to suspend my disbelief on that one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask y'all. I didn't think that worked as well. Because in the book and in the original movie, it's a duel with swords. So it's much more life or death.
That would have been cool in this movie. That's what they should have done.
That would have also been weird, but yeah,
I would have been there for it. Yeah,
and the director specifically said he didn't want guns. He didn't want to do that. Like that.
Good on him. No, that's good.
He didn't
respect.
He didn't want to do that. He didn't want stabbings. He thought fist fight, and that you're in New York, traffic. Like it made sense on that level. I would have been much better if it was they were on a bridge or something, and somehow Annette gets in the way. She almost falls. Sebastian catches her and pulls her back, but then he falls to his death or something like that. Like that would have. I'm with you, Lindsay. Like, of course, now Will Ferrell is literally 1.5 feet taller than Ryan Phillippe, so he can probably absorb the blow a little bit more. But that fair. Cab hit him doing maybe 12. And I just don't. It just wasn't that great of an effect. Like, that's the one thing about this that I'm like, his death scene is kind of lame if you really want to pinpoint it.
Yeah, it could have been better done, but it got the point across fine. Like, that wasn't the point. Wasn't really how he died, just that he died. And actually, a little backstory. I was watching it with my significant other, Jay, on a date night-ish evening, and assuming that he had seen it before, a few times, as had I. And he goes, yeah, I'm really excited to see this movie. I've never seen it before. And my first thought was, oh, no. You have no idea what's about to happen. So as the movie is opening up and we're seeing the opening credits, the first thing, and he has no idea what this movie is about. No idea. And he looks at me in the opening credits and he goes, does someone die in this movie? And I went, wow. What? Why would you say that? And he goes,
they're over a cemetery.
Yeah, that's what he said. I never noticed that until he pointed that out. And I was like,
worst opening credit scene ever. Like, my eyes wanted to fall out of my head watching the stones go by so fast. I was like, oh my God, I cannot watch this. But yes, it's a nice over the cemetery thing.
Yeah.
Very foreshadowing. Well, that's great that you picked up on that, though.
Yeah.
Because I'd never thought about that either. But
me neither.
What a great point to foreshadow that. But I'm with you, though, Brian, the problem is it whizzes by at 100 miles an hour while the rock is playing, and I can't I'm not paying attention to that. I'm paying attention to all the other things that are going on, which I guess is why it's supposed to be subtle and interesting.
I can't even watch it. It hurt my eyes going so fast on this over and over, the same colors and all that. It's just like, oh, I need something else.
There was something about late 90s, early 2000s movies that were like everyone was in love with the orange and brown hue of everything. And this movie is just loaded with that. I mean, even the pool has an orangish, like it's green and teal, but there's like a lot of orange offsetting it and stuff. Maybe it's all the blonde tan people. I don't know, but it's just kind of felt very orange in this movie. Maybe he has a Godfather thing and was just trying to slam that motif into here too. Who knows? So, we're at the part of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. So what are yours for Cruel Intentions? Brian.
Well, I really like this movie a lot. I enjoyed watching it again. I watched it with my wife, and we were both laughing our asses off as we watched this. Just some things. And we were also just going, oh my God, I can't believe they really said that. You know, there's a lot of things in here that you just don't say anymore in movies that they were able to get away with in the 90s, which is crazy to think. It's only 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. But
it was 5 years.
Oh, I'm sorry, 5 years ago. I mean, you'd think that, it would be okay. But anyway, we had a great time watching this movie. Maybe some of the stuff doesn't hold up, and that's just because of the changing times of things, but the story holds up, and I think that the acting is fabulous in this movie, and the story is well written. I really liked it. So for me, I'm giving it a large popcorn. I like it a lot still.
Yeah, honestly, starting this podcast out, and I always liked it. Rewatching it, I was a little unsure. This go around, I probably would have given it a medium popcorn had I not learned this evening that it was actually a remake of a French film, and knowing all that and adding it to that, all of those nuances, I can absolutely see where they were going with it, and I fully appreciate it. Also, I'm with you, Brian. I do really appreciate the acting in this movie and the music, too. So I'm going to go with a large popcorn as well.
You both have hit on something, and we've talked about it throughout the night. This movie, it could just be a total cheese knockoff teen remake of adult story, and you just dismiss it. I mean, those are littered throughout Hollywood. If not for the fact that you got performers all around that could carry all of it. Even the smaller parts like Cecile and Ronald and all the character actors that are surrounding them all really bring something to the table. We didn't even talk about Joshua Jackson and his character in here and all of that stuff. But all the things that everyone does, they really came to play and they brought something. But then when you pull those three leads together, it was clear they had a good sense of what needed to be done for their characters, and they played them so well. And the other part of it is, the story is just cool. Manipulation stories are great drama, and they lead to some really interesting discussions and thoughts about, could it be this, could it be that? And I love Lindsey's alternative theory that what if Annette was behind it all? It's always the innocent ones you got to worry about. That's what this movie's legacy is to me, is the fact that you can watch it all these years later and you put the sensibilities aside and the 2020s glasses that we watch it through now, and you still can really find something to hook into and enjoy. So yeah, it's a large popcorn, and it doesn't deserve to be. That's the thing. This movie does not deserve that rating, but it earns it because of those actors and because of how they were able to pull it off. Now, I've got to ask both of you, any ideas about where this went, like Cruel Intentions 2, Cruel Intentions 3, the failed TV show? Y'all know anything about that at all?
I have seen Cruel Intentions 2, and it was beyond horrible. I didn't even know there was a Cruel Intentions 3, which blows my mind that they would even bother after the debacle of 2. And a TV show? What?
Lindsey, what about you?
Yeah, I vaguely remember watching Cruel Intentions 2 and 3 when they came out, but I remember nothing about either of them. Not the plot, not the actors, not the characters. So clearly they made an impression on me. And I'm with Brian. I didn't realize it was a TV show either.
Well, in Cruel Intentions 2, you have a very young Amy Adams playing the Catherine role, and then a different actor playing Sebastian. It is a prequel. It is to tell you about how they first met when their parents first got together and how Sebastian came to be the playboy that he
Must
is.
have been that shower scene.
Well, here's the thing. It was actually the pilot of a television series they were going to do. The pilot didn't get picked up, but Roger Kumble, who did the movie, said, well, I got something here. I'll just make it a movie. So they went back, they reshot a little bit more of it. They put in that shower scene. They put in a lot of nudity, a lot of other stuff. And they pulled together what he said was going to be the prequel. And then the third one was going to be everything that happened after the second one. Obviously, I've never seen the third one. I don't know what it did. But the second one was built to be a TV show. And then when that didn't happen, he said, screw it. We'll just make a trashy direct-to-DVD movie with it. And they succeeded in that. I want to tell you, what they purport is that Sebastian was a good kid until he met Catherine, and she ruined him and turned him into this just sex-starved maniac. And it is so ridiculous because, no, he was just a bad guy, too. And when he fell in love, it changed his way. But that's the story they want you to believe.
Yeah, but female villains do have a lot of interesting depth to them. I mean, since Shakespeare and Lady McScottish play, I guess I can say it because I'm not in a theater, but Lady Macbeth. And it's just, it's to have a female villain is generally just slightly more terrifying and unnerving than having like your classic male villain. So it does add some interest to it.
I mean, if you're curious, I would say maybe give it a watch. But I would tell you right now, if we reviewed it at the show, it'd be a small popcorn. Like
I'm not that curious, but
it is. It's
not good.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's total trash. But if you
on paper, it sounds like it'd be good.
Version.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, they've thought about rebooting this as a TV series for years now. But honestly, y'all, I don't know why they would. We've had Gossip Girl now, which I watched because my wife watched. I was not a fan, but I watched it with her. And I was the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, it's like Cruel Intentions, but the TV show they never could get together, and it's very similar.
I've never seen Gossip Girl.
That's okay.
Me neither.
I'm just gonna tell you, it's probably skippable. Like if you've gone through this part of your life, you can miss it. But this was several years ago. It was something she got into. So again, people have heard me say for years, I've drugged poor Rachel into watching so many of these awful things that we've reviewed on Film Strip. I got to give her one every now and then.
Reese Witherspoon is on Big Little Lies, though. I've never seen that, but it feels very akin to this type of situation.
That is an excellent show, and everyone in it is fantastic. I do recommend that show. If you haven't seen Big Little Lies, that's definitely worth a watch. Brian, that was you and your wife would dig that as well. That's worth looking up and watching. It's very, very well done. And hits you with stuff you don't see coming, which is some of the best compliment I can say for something that it derives from so many other things. But
I like that. I like a good curveball.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. But this was a good, fun curveball here for Valentine's Day. As we're doing fun things here on Film Strip. Lots of cool stuff coming up, folks. If you go to filmstrippodcast.com, you can find links to all the places where you can find this podcast. Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're there. Please leave us a positive review where you can. Share the show on your social media. You can follow the show's social media at Film Strip Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's where you'll find announcements about cool things the show's got going on. If you follow us on Facebook, every now and then we'll pop on and do a Facebook Live and have on a fun guest, or maybe some of us just sitting around talking about movies, stuff we're watching, all of that. Any way you can interact with us, we appreciate your support. So until next time, for Brian and Lindsay, I'm Jay. Thank you for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.